Hey everyone, welcome back to Screen Review. My name is Megan.
I'm Hannah.
All right, before we begin, make sure to follow us on social media at Boca Tribune. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I already say YouTube because YouTube, really wherever, any social media platform, you'll find us at Boca Tribune. So make sure to give us a follow. You can watch this video later on pretty much any of those platforms I said, except for probably Twitter, but you'll find us at Boca Tribune. Today, we're going to be reviewing Trial of the Chicago 7, a movie released in 2020. It is rated R, and it runs about 2 hours and 10 minutes. You can find it on Netflix. So, as always, we're going to kind of go in spoiler-free and give our general thoughts. If you have not seen the movie, it's the perfect section for you before we get into kind of the spoiler-heavy portion. So, Hannah, as always, what'd you think? Spoiler-free.
Well, this is about the movie's, I guess, release. Not like the release date, because it was only changed a little bit, but this movie is an example of something that was produced by a production company that wasn't like Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus, all those companies. And then Netflix bought it and streamed it on their site versus having it shown in movies because of the pandemic.
Okay.
I thought that was interesting. That this is an example of a really good movie that we could have probably went to go see in the movie theater. I mean, not now because of a pandemic, but in the event that wasn't happening and this movie was released, I would definitely be something that I would want to go watch in a movie theater. And so I never watched it on Netflix because that's what it's there now. And so it's like maybe really my movie theaters are dying. But so it's not really about the movie, I guess. But
not at all. But I mean, yeah, it's spoiler free, so it works.
Exactly.
Any other thoughts?
I mean, all of it is in the content. I don't know. I think that I will say this. I like that the movie itself is very accurate to what happened. They didn't really dramatize anything. If anything, they downplayed the drama of what was going on, which was, I guess, interesting to think about. But I appreciate how they picked a really good cast. And so everyone that they looked like them, you know?
Yeah. Because I will go ahead and preface and say this is obviously based on real true events. So that's kind of what Hannah's poking at when she says that the actors look like the characters or the people they were meant to portray. So, I mean, they did a good job. You see the side-by-sides. I mean, they did a great job. They just did. I guess other things that I would like to say, I mean, obviously, yes, the acting, the characters looked like the people they were meant to portray, but they also did a good job in terms of the caliber of acting. You know, I mean, we have Academy Award nominated and winning cast members here, like Eddie Redmayne. He does a good job. I think he's the only one who's really Academy Award nominated or anything, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt kills it. David Carroll Lynch was in that, I believe, as well. He's pretty good. The rest of them, not a huge act. I mean, I know a lot of actors and actresses' names, but I can't really remember the rest of them in there, but they all did a good job.
Well, Sacha Baron Cohen, whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
He was probably in there, as a decent actor as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All of them are really great actors, but I only know kind of the names of a few off the cuff, you could say. But yes. Regardless, I mean, Hannah kind of touched on the points I wanted to touch on. I mean, accurate. I like how this movie, it kind of weaves in actual footage of these events with the movie adaptation, which I found really interesting and cool because I feel like I haven't really seen that in many other places. So I thought that was cool that they did that. And I will say a little emotional. I found it to be an emotional little movie. I sat back in a seat and teared up a little, and I'm not the type to do that. If anyone knows me in the audience, I do not do that. Movies, TV shows, books do not affect all. This one got a little teary-eyed, you know?
Because it was bigger than a movie. You could feel it happening now still. You know what I mean?
That's definitely why it hurt a little more. Yeah. So, regardless, general thoughts. Movie, I recommend it really to anyone. I mean, I guess a few trigger warnings here and there,
Yeah,
It is rated R, like I said. Yeah, so kind of watch out for some of those scenes. Definitely violent, definitely trigger warnings. I mean, nothing aggressively violent happened, but definitely the context of certain situations was a little bit uncomfortable, especially if you've been in similar situations. That's the best way I can phrase it without giving spoilers.
It makes sense.
Yeah, okay. So regardless, if you have not seen the movie, hop on over to Netflix, give it a quick watch, 2 hours and 10 minutes. I promise it does not feel like 2 hours and 10 minutes.
No.
I'm so against movies that are over 2 hours, but this one, really, I'm not mad at all that it was over 2 hours.
This one felt like they sped up the pace. Like it felt like such a fast-paced movie the entire time. There was nothing slow about this film at all. Like even from the get-go, you're running, and then you just don't stop.
That's true. Yeah, it's definitely give this movie a watch and then come back again. You can find us on our social media pages: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You'll find this video later on at Boca Tribune. So, Hannah, let's get into the spoilers, into the nitty-gritty. Go ahead, just take us to wherever you really want to start in the movie.
I guess I don't know what you want to start with, but I guess the first thing that's coming to my mind, it's not going to be like in the beginning or in the order, but what I'm thinking about is the amount of people that were at this peaceful protest. More than a majority, like a super majority of them were undercover agents.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is just like, how can you condemn a riot when more than half of them are with the government?
Mm-hmm.
Like the government is then inciting violence, not the people who are actually trying to peacefully demonstrate.
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, yeah, understandably so. And I will mention that, I mean, later on they did multiple investigations of the Chicago riots, as you said. And I mean, all of them conclusively found that the police did start the riot. They incited the riot. It was, like you said, in the hands of the government. So it was definitely interesting to think about it from that perspective, because I believe it was Walter Cronkite he's a famous news anchor, by the way. Walter Cronkite was doing I guess he was hosting the DNC or something at the hotel, and he looked out at the crowd of the peaceful protesters, and he said, "It looks like we have a big group of thugs here." Walter Cronkite said that. I'm really disappointed because I liked him, and now I do not.
No, it sucks when people are like that, and you're just like...
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I mean, they did go there to peacefully protest, but then, like, the multiple investigations found the police turned it into a violent riot. And so it's interesting to look down at the crowd, to have a respected news authority look at them and be like, oh, bunch of troublemakers down there peacefully protesting. What horrible people. How dare they?
Because the thing is, that person views the people demonstrating as trouble to the system. Yes. And so it's like, no matter what they're doing, it's causing a threat to my establishment. And therefore they're an issue. They're thugs. Like they're immediately no longer human. There's something else. So they cast judgment onto them without feeling bad about yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to think about it from that perspective. And I think kind of where I want to take it next is talking about a political trial. I mean, throughout the whole movie, they said, we don't want this to be a politicized trial. We don't want it to be this. We don't want it to be that. But inherently it was. You know what I mean? It was mostly
set up to be that.
Yes, it was to make an example out of these men that they were going to put in federal prison for. They're saying, oh, you want to peacefully protest? You want to incite a riot? This is what happens. Essentially.
Exactly. It's two silence movements. And that's what happened. Like in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s was the biggest like proliferation of incarcerating people who are peacefully protesting. Like silencing demonstrations so that people no longer want to dissent from the government. Like a lot of abolition movements that have started stem from like remembering our ancestors who like fought these movements, you know, and then were imprisoned for it. And so like abolition movements cycle through time, through many things, but through one thing, it definitely was these like movements against the war.
Yes. And I had a point to make about Abby Hoffman, but I don't. Oh, right. I thought it was interesting that at one point in the movie, he mentioned, they asked, oh, what's your date of birth? Like just random standard questions when you're at the witness stand. And he said 1960, or like conceptually 1960 or something. And I think that's definitely interesting to bring out. It was almost like his period of enlightenment, like his awakening. And
exactly.
I really, really liked that he said that. I thought that was a really poignant thing. I honestly,
because that's like the birth date of revolutionaries was the 1960s, and that's what he was referring to, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree to that. I mean, this movie does a great job. Like Hannah said, it kind of starts off running. So it's a lot. The beginning is very chaotic. You're getting introduced to a lot of characters all at once, pretty much. All of them kind of making plans to head to Chicago to participate in this peaceful protest against the DNC candidate. Which was interesting, honestly, because obviously they were protesting the DNC in general because the Democrats were the main supporters of the Vietnam War and kind of the escalation of that war. Whereas Nixon Nixon promised to get, bring our boys back home, bring our troops in, get them over here. He did it in his second term, I believe. I was watching a video that said that. So like, thank you so much. So
thank you 4 years later.
Yeah, literally. Regardless. So that's why they're choosing to do this protest at the DNC, because the Democratic candidate for president who's going to be sworn in or made official at the DNC was a pro-war candidate. That's when they started off making a bunch of things about LBJ in the beginning, Lyndon B. Johnson. Because he was the one who started the draft, escalated the war, etc. So the Democrats were kind of just following suit with his policies. So a little bit of history to back it up, but that's why the protest was going to happen there.
And that was the space. Okay, that was cute of him. But anyways, sorry. However, and like Hoffman was saying, it's where all the cameras were gonna be, and so like that was just the best place to have it.
Yeah, you're talking about in the park. Yeah, in the park in this side of it. Right, because these people, these groups, I mean, all different groups from all walks of life. Like Hannah and I were saying, like the students of the Democratic Society, the Yippies, not really the Black Panthers, because I mean, Bobby Seale wasn't there. Like Bobby Seale wasn't there. I will just go ahead and say that. But regardless, all these groups from all over the United States came to this one place to stand in solidarity against the war and against the draft. And so I think that's important to note, Hannah.
And I think it's important to know also that like during the trial, I think it was like intentional, one, because like it actually happened, but two, I feel like the movie people like emphasized it heavy to like show how Seal's fight is different from all of these white men's fight. You know what I mean? Like they weren't really like Black Panthers weren't there to like protest the war. They were there to fight for their life. You know what I mean? To fight for their rights.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point.
A different fight.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point Seale was trying to make throughout the entire movie. I mean, he stood on trial without a lawyer for the whole time. He was bound. The entire time he was bound and gagged in the courtroom. Like, there were so many things. Even the threatening notes made to jurors 6 and 11 from the Black Panthers, like even the way the judge presented that to the jurors was very disgusting. It
was just like, I don't understand how this guy could still be a judge after this. Like, how could he not be disbarred or like dethroned, whatever it's called for judges? Like,
maybe dethroned. Yeah, I don't understand. And the only kind of explanation that I can give behind it was that it was the 1960s, 1970s.
True. And so they're just kind of like, oh, stop.
Yeah, they're like, oh, like he's been here for so long. Like basically the equivalent of like, oh, he's on tenure. Like he'll be good. Like he's old. Don't worry about it. It's just,
it's just like the passes that old white men get to do and say whatever they please is so insane to me. Like, what kind of patriarchal society do we have that we allow the oldest men in our lives to do whatever they want? What? That's a question.
Oh, I'm not supposed to answer. I have to know the answer to that. I don't know. I
know. No one knows. It's just like
it's just what happens. It's interesting because I mean, this judge was clearly biased from the very beginning, and I think it's interesting to note that the prosecution was actually pushing for Hoffman to be the judge in real life. They wanted Hoffman to be the judge, the presiding judge over the trial, because obviously he's ridiculous. He handed out, like, I think it was like 147 counts of contempt. Boy, like, this was totally this was totally up to 4 years of prison time for contempt of court for some of these defendants, not even including the charges that they're going to be getting in sentencing when they are found guilty of inciting a riot and conspiracy charges, whatever.
We went insane, like literally was manic the entire time, and I can't believe that they didn't just give up on the trial. Like, I wish that these both lawyers saw how crazy this guy was being. It wasn't just the prosecution being like, like, deal with it. Like, he was also getting yelled at, you know?
Sort of. I mean, the judge was clearly biased in favor of the prosecution the whole time.
Oh, I'm not saying that, like, he wasn't agreeing with their argument. I'm saying, like, he still would not let the prosecutor cut him off. However, I'm not saying that it was it wasn't equitable what he was doing. It was clearly like he was antagonizing the defendants, but he still was horrible, like, in general, like, just not professional at all, and not whatever. But I can't believe they both didn't say, like, we need a new judge. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe they allowed him to just keep doing that. I guess maybe you have to as a lawyer. I don't know, but if I was, like, there in the courtroom and I was a defendant, I would be like, this guy's incompetent. Like, we're not gonna have. And I'm sorry.
No, you say this guy right here, so incompetent. No, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to think about it from the point of view of Schultz. I mean, Schultz was introduced as this character, this, like, young 33-year-old lawyer, like, ooh, he's so amazing and talented.
Yeah, like,
you know,
so
this is the biggest trial. But the thing is, this was the biggest trial of his career he was getting at 32. The attorney general told him that when he handed him this case. And so to him, he's not going, like, when he has the upper hand, of course he's going to want to keep it. Because inherently, in a selfish way, this is beneficial for his career. I mean, this is making headlines. The chance of the world is watching. I mean, the world is watching. And he wants to win.
And that he wants to see himself, like, be the prosecutor that, like, lets the government do whatever they want.
He's going to be, I mean, he is a lifelong lawyer, I'm sure. And I'm going to go ahead and guess Buddy has his eye on some higher up positions in the future.
Like attorney general.
Like attorney general, like a judge, a justice, etc. So, I mean, this is beneficial for his career to be able to say that, like, oh, I single-handedly protected America from these disgusting people, you know?
I agree. Here, let's cut to commercial, and then I'm going to pose a question about what we're talking about.
Sounds good.
Information. If it exists in writing, we print it. If it exists online, information. If it exists in writing, we print it. If it exists online, we update it. If it exists on mobile, we notify. If it exists in video, we show it. If it exists in audio, we play it. In the past, the news had to wait for a paper to print for it to happen. Today, news happens in real time. It's analyzed, edited, and published immediately by us, your neighbors, and of course, you. Wherever you are, you write, edit, give opinions, share photos, and make the news happen. This is why a paper needs to be on print, on screen, and on your phone. Wherever you are, your news has its pulse in the community. The Boca Raton Tribune. We are much more than just a newspaper. We are your closest neighbor.
Welcome back from commercial.
Hey,
I'm Megan. That's
I'm
Hannah.
Hannah.
That's Hannah. Follow us on social media at Boca Tribune. You can find us pretty much on any platform. Give us a follow. Why not? Hannah, what's your question? That's it. I did the long one. I think.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My question. So it kind of goes back more to the judge versus Schultz. I think that's what we were talking about last. But
Yes.
I'll read exactly how I wrote it.
Okay.
I'm not gonna do that because it's not really a question. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you anyways.
Yeah, I kind of want to hear it.
Okay, I'll read how I wrote it. I wonder if they had chosen a less blatantly biased judge, they, the government / prosecution, might have won the case. Question mark.
I mean, yeah, of course it's likely because eventually all the charges were overturned. So obviously,
right.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, they saw that like, dang, this probably isn't the best. And I think it's also interesting to point out that Kennedy, do not ask me the first name, it was a Kennedy that was running for the Democratic position, whatever. And they had won the primary in California, I believe. I think it's California. Regardless,
Sure.
They were assassinated soon after this Kennedy was. And a lot of people were thinking that if Kennedy weren't assassinated, he would have secured the Democratic nominee and been the one sworn in at the DNC, whatever. And they believe that this whole thing wouldn't have happened because Kennedy was an anti-war candidate. Whereas,
dang,
yeah, the one that was actually chosen was a pro-war candidate. So there would have been no reason for the peaceful protests at all.
No one would have. And he would have won the presidency.
He would have, because the reason historians believe Nixon won this election is because he was an anti-war candidate. So that's literally it. I mean, and his charm. I mean, but the reason he won is because he was an anti-war candidate. That's just it. So if the Democrats put up an anti-war candidate like Kennedy, this would have played out. This would not have played out. This wouldn't have happened.
And then Nixon went and messed it up for himself. He wasn't confident.
Fun. Let's talk about Nixon. I mean, we all know Nixon and Watergate, the fun, illegal bugging that he did. Fun fact, in this actual case, the FBI office bugged the defense's office, like the defense lawyers. Wasn't in the movie, but they did.
Oh.
They're like listening in.
That's illegal. Did they find out?
I mean, nothing happened, but it's a fact. Yeah, like nothing happened, nothing came of it, but yes. I mean, as we were saying, I mean, the FBI and all the police officers, they're all undercover there. So they were involved right from the beginning.
Sorry, say that again.
The FBI and the police, the undercover police, were involved right from the beginning.
Yes. So the 10,000 people who were that was the body of every single group.
What do you mean?
Are we talking about Nixon? Or are we talking about the movie?
I'm talking about the movie.
Okay. Me too. That's why I was like, what? No, in like every single demo, like with the SDS and the Yippies, like it was just undercover agents and the cops and the FBI, like.
Yeah, they infiltrated the groups to gather intelligence. Right. I mean, it was clear who the targets were of this, and the reason that these police officers and the FBI were planted was so that they could testify, which they all did happily. And I would love so many of them had stereotypical cop mustaches, and I found it to be funny.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
That's the first thing I noticed.
No, I was honestly, when they were doing it, I was just like, are they pretending to be cops like in the trial? And then I was like, no. Yeah, they were pretending to be like actual genuine people. And they're just cops. Never mind.
Yeah, no. Regardless, I think that it's really interesting. I mean, one of I guess not the most, but definitely a pivotal scene in this movie was Abby Hoffman answering a bunch of questions from reporters. And at one point in the movie, I mean, he was asking the parks guy for the permit, and he's like, "Oh, like, you know, it doesn't matter if you give me $100,000, whatever." And so one of the reporters asked Abby, you know, "Oh, you know, is $100,000 your price, like, to call the whole thing off?" And he says, "Oh, like, call the revolution off?" They're like, "Yeah, what's your price?" And he said, "My life." Real quote. You can find the real video. I watched it many times. 45-second clip. Real easy.
Okay.
Just saying. So powerful.
Yeah.
Like, that was so much to watch. This movie, I mean, the nuances, the little tiny lines like that were just delivered so matter-of-factly, so plainly, just to underscore the entire film.
I feel like he delivered him and Bobby Seale delivered all of them, I feel like.
Oh, I would agree to that. I mean, you could say Tom Hayden at the end reading the names, but I mean, that didn't even happen in real life.
Exactly.
That was Dave Dellinger who did it early on in the trial, and he was interrupted.
I think also Hoffman said that I'm happy to be nominated for the Academy Award of Protest, not those two other people. Like, it was Hoffman that actually said it in real life.
It's possible. Hoffman that said it, or Hayden?
Yeah. No, Hoffman.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Funny people. And I think it's also important to note that, I mean, not important to know, but just interesting, Hoffman and Rubin, the guys from the Yippies, they did wear judges' robes to court. That actually happened, but they were not wearing the cop uniform underneath. But they were charged with contempt for doing it.
Of course.
So dumb. I guess, yeah, let's talk about Bobby Seale for a little bit. I mean, this was insane. I mean, again, he was bound and gagged in a courtroom. And this actually happened for like it wasn't like in the middle of the trial. It was early on in the trial, actually, in real life. And it happened for a longer period of time than what they showed in the movie.
Like for days, or?
Some people said for days, but I believe it's for days. That could be wrong. But yeah, that's one source that I read said for days.
Yeah, and that's what.
Let's just talk about a blatant violation of not even his civil rights, but his rights as a human being in, let's just, a United States courtroom. I mean, for the judge to look at Bobby Seale and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're mad that I'm starting the trial without your lawyer here? Okay, little marshals, like cops, like, go take him in the room and do with him what you will. Like, do what's necessary." I'm so sorry. But the fact that the trial was not stopped then and there, and Judge Hoffman wasn't, like you said, disbarred, dethroned, what have you, at that exact moment, just truly speaks to the system at large. And that
the blood and the systemic racism dripping out of our system's bones and infrastructure that he sits on top of, that's what it calls to me. That's what that scene was. Yes. You could literally see it oozing out of like the dripping and decaying body that it's nasty because our system is horrible, and it perpetuates that exact image every single day, all day.
Mm-hmm. And as I was saying, I mean, it's incredible in a negative way, incredible that this trial wasn't stopped immediately upon this point, because it showed the complacency within everyone. I mean, Bobby Seale was being tried with all these other people, with the Chicago 7, whatever. And I mean, they didn't even do anything or care, you know?
Even it's because he was a criminal. That's why. Because he's less than human.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And on top of that, he's black. So he's immediately more threatening. We have to contain him.
Yeah. And that's why Seale believed he was even being tried with these people to kind of intimidate the jury, which, I mean, is a fair thought to have.
That's exactly what happened when the Black Panther, leaflets were distributed to all these people who were, you know what I mean? Of course they weren't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just disturbing to think that they found the Black Panthers to be threatening in the courtroom, whatever. Bobby Seale was in Chicago, I believe he said, for 4 hours. He gave a speech, he went home.
That was it. He had nothing to do with the white man convention. Like, and that's just it, because he's fighting his own fight right now.
Exactly. And that's why Bobby Seale would say something to the effect throughout the whole trial, like, you know, you guys don't get it. So, I mean, even distancing himself from it entirely, he was saying, like, there are signs out back, like, out front of the courthouse, whatever, that say, like, oh, free the Chicago 7. Like, there's 8 of us. I'm not with them. Like, the public doesn't even see me with them. So it's just like he was truly isolated throughout the entire trial, being the only one who wasn't represented by Kunstler, being the only one who didn't have representation the whole time, and just was honestly the most disrespected and dehumanized by the judge out of them all. I feel comfortable saying that.
I mean, you're exactly right, and like that's exactly what happened. You know what I mean? So you should feel comfortable saying that, because there's no denying that. It's like there's no other way to interpret that situation, because that's what happened.
Thank you. I feel so validated.
No, but seriously, because like he's violated, number one, his constitutional right to a lawyer. Like,
yeah.
What? Like, we have like precedent, like we have case law that trickles down to this. I forget what the case was, but I used to know it. Now I don't. However, it doesn't matter what it was, because it existed. But now I'm just mad because it was such a clear violation, and then they continued because no one cared.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just the end of it. No one cared. And that's just it. That was the sad truth behind this. I thought one of the most powerful scenes in the movie, because there were quite a number in this movie, was kind of at I wouldn't necessarily say the climax of the movie, but when I guess we'll call them the Chicago 7, most of the people, Hayden, Hoffman, Rubin, Dellinger, whatever, they were all kind of cornered in front of that watering hole, like, well, fancy people bar, and they were all watching the DNC. They were cornered by the cops in front of that building. The cops removed their badge numbers and their little name tags so they could throw them through the glass window. How disappointing that this happens. I'll say both, because it's true and it's disgusting. And this movie, I believe, just did an excellent job. I think it was Hoffman that was delivering his like weird little comedy things that he would do, and he said, like, yeah, he said, like, oh, these cops did the one thing you never want to see a cop do: take off their little badge numbers and their little name tag, so they can't be identified, so they can do what they will.
And you know what's even more incredulous is the fact that literally happened over the summer with the National Guard and Trump sending in troops with no identification at all. It's illegal for a cop to not have their identification on them, and so when you hide your badge number or you no longer have your name, like, no one can account for you, so they don't know who you are. So you're a free agent at that point. You can do whatever you please, and that's the intention of sending in those people. So when they don't have their name tag, they're allowed to do what the government truly wants them to do without having to hold the government accountable to that person's actions.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, where you would see, like, at these riots that happened over the summer, when there was like miscellaneous bricks and stuff, you know what I mean? Or like you would see like undercover cops lighting cars on fire, and you wonder, why are there fires? Why are there broken windows? Because the cops are over here in the back throwing it at you. Like, I don't know. It's just, time is not linear, and clearly you're going through another revolutionary part of our life, which is an interesting, like, the life of humanity. But I like that this movie came out in 2020 in the fall, like, because the summer of 2020 was this in real time. And now we're able to reflect back and learn, like, this is what we're going to have to face. Like, we have to be ready to, like, it's our life or it's our rights, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's definitely interesting. And again, that's one of the reasons, I hate to keep using the word, but powerful is really the only thing I can think of. But I think one of the reasons that made this movie so powerful was the parallels that you could see between then, 1967 or 68, and 2020. It's disheartening, it's disappointing, and infuriating.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the type of movie you can sit back and watch and like not feel something. I don't know how you don't feel anything if you watch this movie. This is definitely a movie that makes you want to do something. Nothing violent, no inciting riots, but it just makes you want to, you know, get involved and educate yourself on, as Hannah said, the oozing system.
Yes.
It's definitely, yeah, this movie is eye-opening in the least, I would say.
It's eye-opening in the what?
In the least. Like, just to say the least, it's eye-opening.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yikes.
yeah. I have not much more to say. Just the fact, I'm going to reiterate, this was a political trial.
Yes.
Because it was trying to silence a political movement.
Mm-hmm.
The government will always try to silence political movements, and so we have to be advantageous when we're put on a political trial.
Mm-hmm.
I think this election could be considered a political trial. It was a test to see, like, to gauge how America feels. And right now, it's good to know that a majority of Americans feel united in the fact that we need to transition to something new. But I think that's more my opinion versus anything else. So I will clarify it with that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Hannah had her little piece that she said. I mean, At the end of the day, yes, this movie was entertaining. Yes, it was a good movie. High production value, high caliber of acting. But truly what made it special was the content of the movie and how you can see this movie and feel comfortable that it adhered relatively closely to history. I mean, there was nothing wildly inaccurate in this movie that would skew the, I guess, overall bottom line of accuracy. So you can watch this and truly just think about parallels between this movie and today and how we, the individuals, can choose to exist in the system. I guess is kind of what I want to end it on. It's definitely not a movie where like I finished it, clicked off the TV, and was like, how entertaining. It just definitely makes you rethink your position in the world. I mean, you can be a Schultz.
Right.
Or you can change your position.
Or you can be like a Hayden, or you can be a Hoffman. Yes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's definitely interesting to see. I mean, like, watch the movie and see which character would I be. I hope none of you are Judge Hoffman. Like,
true, yeah.
Never be a Judge Hoffman. Never be a Judge Hoffman. That'd be wild.
No, but honestly, that's a cool thing to think about. Like, to going into this movie, trying to identify yourself,
mm-hmm.
and then see where you are on like the revolutionary scale, and whether or not you feel comfortable with your position in society and how privileged you are within that.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not like you're at a higher level than someone else, and if you're okay with that, then like that's on you. But if you want to try and change that, then like we have work to do.
And I mean, I would say probably at least among the 7. Like, I don't want to put it out there and be like, oh, there's a sliding scale of like who you should be and who you shouldn't be. Like, don't be like a Freund's or like a whiner,
Right.
But I mean, it's just interesting to think about how you identify. And again, like Hannah said, if you're comfortable in that position, and like, why are you comfortable in that position? Is being like, because being uncomfortable is not necessarily a bad thing if it forces you to grow and change. I mean, humankind is really interesting in that sense, where in uncomfortable positions, I mean, the fight or flight,
Exactly. And either way, you're changing something.
Exactly. I mean, sort of. What I was more so was using the fight or flight to say was like, either you run away and retreat into your comfortable position, or you force yourself to grow, evolve, and change.
Yeah.
It's an interesting choice. And again, this movie, I mean, clearly really made us think. And again, I always say that that's kind of the mark of a great movie.
This was an unexpected gem, I will say.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it was going to be as good as it was, and so I'm really pleased by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. So that's pretty much all that I have. We ended on kind of an interesting note, I would say.
Yeah, kind of challenged the viewer to something. We gave you a task.
Watch the movie, though. Let us know what you think.
But don't forget about that.
Yeah, don't forget fight or flight, guys. Joking. Watch the movie. Enjoy it.
But also, remember, the whole world is watching.
Chills. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, really wherever, and join us next week. We are going to be watching, forgive me, I don't remember what movie we're going to be watching.
I think we're watching Klaus.
I believe we're watching Klaus. It is. Yeah, come join us for a fun holiday movie next week. Klaus, Tuesday, 7 p.m. See you guys then. Thank you.
It'll be fun. Cool. Bye.
Bye.